Hey there, welcome to First Look. Thank you for being here with this week as we enter into a new liturgical year and a new season. And I'm starting off today in kind of an odd place because it's been one of those I've had an odd 24 hours where the first of all this morning I'm taking Liam to school and I get a flat tire, and he was a real trooper, but it was getting over to a place. Luckily, we were within walking distance of the school. I drop him off, I call him. Of course, I decided to get a flat tire on the coldest day of the month. And so get the tire switched out, get a new one on the way. All in all, fine, but just one of those mornings where it just kind of throws everything off. Now you're a little bit behind on everything, so that's kind of where we're starting. And that was coupled with yesterday being strange. Hopefully in a way that none of you knew, but maybe a few of you did. And I'm gonna see if now in retrospect if you know. So as you're probably aware, I preach from an iPad, and I have for 8 or 9 years or something like that. And so what happened on Sunday is the first time that this particular thing has happened. Now, in the past, I've forgotten my iPad, didn't bring it with me, and I printed off the sermon, and it was fine. You just print, go from notes. But what happened was that my iPad decided to update itself 4 minutes before I was about to preach, so I didn't even know it was happening. I got up there to read the scripture, and it was doing that. It had the black screen where it's loading up the information for the update. And so your mind is like, oh no, what happens now? And so I was trying to kind of read the scripture a little slower. And then I prayed for illumination right beforehand, which I don't always do. Sometimes I do. Hoping that maybe it would get me. It did not. So luckily, the format of the sermon was such that I only really needed to recall about half a sermon's worth. They're 60% of worth, because I already had a plan to do the thing where I was going to be praying through each element of the scripture like I did. But I did not plan to do the first 60% of the sermon just off the top of my head, which is another good reason why what we're doing here is so valuable, because a lot of what I thought about here at First Look was what ended up happening in the sermon anyway. And so it was, it all fell together okay. But if you notice, whatever you're watching the service, I'm completely away from the pulpit. I'm roaming around. And that's because I wasn't going to be looking at anything anyway. So it was, I think it was fine. I think hopefully the final message didn't suffer for it. But that's what happened on Sunday. But it is what it is. And I could just hear pastors of years gone by shaking their finger at me going, see, this is why you don't use technology. But 99 times out of 100 I really like it, and this was just the one time that it didn't work out the way it needed to. But it is what it is. We roll with the punches here. All right, so it's going to be Advent. We're in Advent somehow. And we have a couple of things for you to know as we move into Advent. First, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. It may not be different to you, but it's different to me. Over the last couple of years here at Northmont, I've usually worked on a theme, some concept, but it's been one that I created and whatever. This year I found one from a resource that my wife pointed out to me. And so what you should have in your email is an Advent devotional, which kind of explains the theme a little bit. And I was really interested to see how this would work, because this curriculum has like liturgy and different services you can do, and it has artwork, and it has themes, and it has these devotionals that you have in front of you. And so you got an email, and that's something called Those Who Dream, and it's an Advent devotional. And so you can either have it the devotional for your phone or for print, which you can print off at home if you wanted to. But we're also going to have print versions here on Sunday. But we wanted to give that to you ahead of time. It's just because we've done some Advent devotional things in the past, and so this was already pre-done for us, and so we wanted to go ahead and give that to you. I really like the theme. I really like the whole package of stuff. You can almost think of it like a VBS curriculum for adults. VBS curriculum for adults for Advent. I mean, it has the Advent readings and all the things you would need, and so it should be very cohesive, and I'm looking forward to that. And so I wanted to start off just by reading a little bit of what this theme, Those Who Dream, what it's centered on, and why we're using it. So this describes the devotional, but it also kind of describes the theme itself. This devotional is for the dreamers in all of us, those who dream of a deeper connection with God, and those who dream of a better world. It's for those who dream of comfort, and for those who have given up on their dreams. It's for those whose dreams have been crushed, and for those who show us that dreams take time. And so as you walk through these prompts and readings day by day, may you dream alongside prophets and angels, Mary and the Magi. Together may we seek and sow God's dreams for our world. And so I liked the forward-thinking element to it. I think it went with something that we were doing earlier in the year when I did that whole series with prophets and poetry. I thought that it complemented that idea really nicely. And so when I found it, I had already done that series with you in the summertime, and I thought, oh, this would be a wonderful kind of follow-up and recap and connecting all those things together. So that was the idea. The scripture that we'll have here for today follows that pattern that they've set up. So that's what we're going to be looking at here this morning. So this is from Mark 13, verses 24 through 37. So Mark 13 is where we're beginning. And I like Mark for one particular reason. I mean, I like all four Gospels for what they are and the unique ways that they approach telling the story and setting up kind of the world in which Jesus lives. But what do you get from, at least what I get from Mark, is that I always read it as like that first eyewitness. It's fresh in the minds of those who are writing. It's that earliest one. So even though it doesn't follow, it's not the first one in the canonical order. Matthew, of course, is first. But Mark is predominantly understood to be the one that was written first. And so it's shorter, and the other Gospels kind of fill in, kind of use it as a source material. And so there's something about that, like that first look that I appreciate, because it's a little bit more, I don't want to say raw, but it comes with maybe less time to sit back and reflect on who Jesus is or the future of the church. It's just sort of like, hey, this is what happened. It's that kind of feel. I don't know that you'll necessarily get that in this particular passage, but I think this text is a really good one to start with, because it speaks to I think it speaks to the urgency in which Jesus enters the world. Hopefully that makes sense in a minute. Okay. So again, this is Mark 13. We're going to start 24 through 37. There's a couple of different segments of the passage, and so just be aware that that's true. Okay. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with a great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather the elect from the four winds and from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. And then it pivots. So it kind of sets up this, I don't want to say alarming element, but the passage starts very intentionally with looking at this transcendent kind of Jesus, which is, again, a perfect bridge, because we just had the reign of Christ the King Sunday. And so as we start Advent, this pivot that I was talking about, that going from Jesus and the life of one on earth, transcending that into this the heavenly, eternal concept of Jesus, and then we're going to land right back in the incarnate, right? So it's kind of like this long arc pivot from understanding Jesus from one aspect to another aspect. And then it goes from this to the lesson of the fig tree. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. And then the next segment is called the necessity for watchfulness. But about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his own work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening or at midnight, or at the cockcrow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And when I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. So, it's you can read that passage in a lot of different contexts and with a lot of different emphases, depending on what's happening. And when we look at the first week in Advent, it takes on a whole other perspective. So that passage by Mark 14, again, Mark's a little shorter of a gospel, and so that's closer to the end of the gospel. And it's obviously a preparation, right? That's the idea. And so Jesus is trying to prepare not only his disciples but the generation of those who are there, for what is coming. Not only for his death and resurrection, but then also for um, the coming kingdom and the change in the world and the eventual um, second coming. And I'm sure somewhere along the line in the sermon we'll talk about the difference between um, you know a generation or an age or the time when all this will happen. But for our purposes, the passage is really there to set up the concept of preparation, the staying alert. It's like this is the time when something is about to move. And Advent traditionally has preparation and waiting is what we talk about with Advent all the time. But of course, we also look at it from from four different unique perspectives of hope and peace and joy and love. We almost always talk about those four ideas in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes we emphasize other themes, and that kind of gets put in the background, but it's always there. And so, as in this first week, as we look at hope, I think that's a key reminder, and it, again, changes the way we read the passage, at least for this time. If we were reading it, right before Easter, then we would be looking at that slightly differently. And even if you would read that passage last week, you might read that a little bit differently, because then you're looking at more of the transcendent Jesus, who changes the world in a different way. But the change, the preparation, the staying awake, the getting ready that we're talking about is the incarnation, and which is just as a startling revelation as anything else that Jesus does. And I think that as we sit here and focus on the hope that comes in that, I think that it's an interesting dual experience, I guess, for lack of a better term, because the passage brings you some level of anxiety, right? I mean, and I think that's which is okay. I think it's when someone says be prepared or be awake or be ready and that kind of thing, you're supposed to summon that kind of anxiousness. It's like, well, the one who has left may return, at midnight or at the cockcrow or at dawn or at midday. Like, who knows? But there's a sense of you and I have some engagement in this. We have things to do. We have plans to make. And I think in this season, especially right after Thanksgiving and doing all that, that's on our minds in a very practical, tangible way, I think, all the time. This season is one where there always seems to be something to do, something on the calendar to look at. And sometimes there's like really simple, fun things like holiday gatherings and that kind of thing. We have a few here at Northmont that I'm looking forward to. But it also is, gifts and making things and making preparations and getting the tree and decorating and all those kind of those every day or every year kind of experiences. But I think what's great about the way that Advent is paired is that with the season is that we're already in that mindset. And so we don't have to reach very far to kind of to um, to hold on to that feeling. So there's that anxiety that comes with preparation, but then it's also paired this week with hope. And hope also, I think, is the sort of driving force behind what keeps us motivated to be prepared. Um, that hey, if I do this well, that somehow it'll be okay. That God will make a way, and that something is about to change. Just because this is how my brain works, and this just happened this morning. Like I said, you have this. I had the flat tire. Now, luckily, I was in a physical place where, like, I hit a pothole. I knew it was a flat tire, and it was, I was, you know what to do, right? I was like, I was already alert because I had coffee, and Liam's in the car, and so I'm just like going along, and luckily, or I've been there enough times. You blow a tire or something happens, and your brain starts working. Well, what am I gonna? You're already a little bit like more alert now, and what am I gonna do now? So luckily, I knew the neighborhood. I knew where I was. I knew that we weren't that far from where I needed to go. I was able to pull over. I could feel, and I had enough experience to like, um, you know, limp the car to where it needed to be, pull off on a safe side street, park, walk a couple of minutes. He had layers and coat and whatever, and um, I have a cell phone and I have AAA, and um, I have the funds to get a new tire, which is what happened. And I knew where to go for the tire, right? I mean, like, there's a certain um, being prepared in that way is a good and comforting thing, right? I mean, there's a comfort in knowing that even though this was not the way I wanted to spend my morning, that I had the resources, I had the experience, I had the backups. If I couldn't handle it on my own, I have many people who would come to be helpful. And so there's a privilege in that for sure. And I have to recognize that every time that being prepared there's a privilege to it. At least prepared in the way that I was prepared. I didn't miss anything this morning. I was trying to get to something here this morning just because I try to get here a little bit earlier, but it was okay. And yeah, it's really, really cold out, but I had a coat, and I've got feet that work. But then you realize there are a lot of people that would have ruined their month, or that would have ruined their week. If not, not to say ruin their day, it would have altered their plans. It would have put them in a really bad spot, and to no fault of their own, just life circumstances, they may have made things much harder for them. But there's something to preparation. There's a privilege to it because I could be prepared, right? Knowing what to do, having the resources to take care of it, are things that I was able to do, but not everyone would be able to. But then there's also a kind of humility to preparation, because it means that you need to recognize that, hey, things can go wrong, or things are going to change. What will I do when they change? Who will I rely on? Because I couldn't have done all those things by myself. I had to rely on, the the people helped with the tire and all that kind of stuff, and the school that was, there to receive them, and the backups. There's a humility to that too, to know that, like, I'm not, even though I know what to do, I can be prepared. There's still a humility to recognizing that the only way that works is that people are there to be helpful. And so part of what I'm thinking about for this, I guess for this season, and specifically for this week, is that as we look at these themes for Advent, trying to kind of tap into the emotions of what it's like to do what we need to do, that we're being called to do, and that dreaming is, those who dream, there's something hopeful and aspiring to it, but it also comes with a sense of knowing that we, to accomplish those dreams, it's not going to be on just, pulling myself up by my bootstraps. It's going to be about relying on something greater than myself. And that I can think and work towards things, but knowing that I'm not going to do that alone. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the theme looks like and feels like, and what this passage is like for us as we get into this particular season. I always look forward to Advent with you. I always look forward to moving towards Christmas with you. I've had the privilege of being here a few years to do that with you, and this Advent we get a chance to do some things that I think are really special. So that's a pretty wonderful thing. Well, that's what I have for this week. And so I hope that you're able to look at the devotions, look at the passage for today and for this week. And I hope that that's a good way of starting off the season. So thank you for being you. Thank you for sharing a few minutes with me. And I hope that the beginning of the season treats you well. And I will see you next time for another First Look. So take care.